Welcome back to the channel. The preseason for fall gardening is in full effect here in Austin, Texas. It was a big week here in my urban garden, so let's get started. This week started off with a bit of spring cleaning. I noticed that 4 bell pepper plants finally stopped producing fruit, and noticed the aphids had totally taken over some of the plants. I definitely neglected these plants because look at this branch. You can see more aphids than plant. An aphid is a tiny bug, smaller than a grain of rice, that loves to drink the juice from plants. Aphids come in many colors like green, black, brown, and even pink. They have soft bodies and long legs, and sometimes they even have wings. Aphids love to hang out in groups on the leaves and stems of plants. They use their sharp mouth parts to poke into the plant and suck out the sap, which is like the plant's juice. This can make the plant sick and weak. One cool thing about aphids is that they can make a sweet liquid called honeydew. Ants love this honeydew and will even protect aphids from other bugs just to get it. So I started the cleanup process, but I made two crucial mistakes. I decided to clip the stem of the bell pepper plant instead of just pulling the plant out. Not sure why I thought this was a good idea, but that caused some problems that we'll later see. The next mistake was that I didn't water the pots before pulling the plants. Since the soil was so dry, it made it very difficult to pull the plants, as you can see in the video as I struggle to pull out the plant. So the combo of these two things made cleaning these pots a lot more challenging than it should be. Once they were all out, I removed the mulch I used to keep the soil moist. This was something I did differently this spring and seemed to help a ton. After that, I turned the soil a bit to help break up some of the roots that were still left behind. Then I gave the soil a little water to finish this task off. Now, off to the next task for the week. If you didn't see last week's video, I showed you all how I took my extra romaine lettuce sprouts and transferred them into my homemade Kratky hydroponic system. I like to give my prune sprouts a second chance, so I have been trying this new strategy to see if I can get some additional yield. So if you missed that video, I will link it at the end of this one. Looks like we have a visitor. Oakley wants to see what Kratky hydroponics is all about. I have been trying to dunk the cloning collars in the water prior to setting them in the basket so I can make sure the roots are completely soaked so they dangle into the water. I noticed that when I don't do that, they get stuck to the bottom of the collar and never touch the water, causing them to dry out. Boom! Now we have two more Kratky systems. Now I can slide them next to the other system from earlier in the week. Hopefully next week we will see some growth and not dried up lettuce. Man, this is one good looking trio. This year, I've been using the Grow Calendar from Urban Farmer. The calendar contains the times of when I should start planting and if they should start indoor or direct sow. They have calendars for most regions, so feel free to check them out to help you with your garden planning. I always begin planting with fine soil. As my gramps always says, if you don't start with good soil, you'll never have the opportunity to plant them in good soil. At least, this is my version of the saying. So I went with this ultimate potting mix, which contains worm castings, which I believe are the secret sauce to a great garden. I like to think of them as the probiotic for your soil. Down the road, I will create a video that goes into more depth on this topic. So I start by pouring the soil into a bowl and adding water. It is important to add water to your soil prior to putting them into the containers because it allows for every inch of the soil to get moist. Moisture is how germination occurs, so this just gives it the best chance. I am planting some Matador spinach seeds that I got from my local nursery. I like this type of spinach because of how big the leaves are. My fiance makes a killer spinach dip, so the more spinach the better. Leave a comment below if you want me to do a video about the spinach dip. I normally use the standard 3-inch cube starter pots, like you see I did with my romaine lettuce seeds, but I currently do not have enough, so I had to improvise. I decided to double up using my hydroponic cages. I have too many to count, so I thought if I turned them in an offsetting way, then they would stop the soil from falling out. Hopefully this works, because I don't really have another option at the moment. Now that I have all my cages prepped, I can start filling up the baskets with some soil. I like to pack the soil in lightly so that the gravity has the opportunity to wrap the seed instead of me compacting it. This is just something I've always did, but not sure if it has any merit. This is definitely my favorite part of gardening. Comment below what your favorite part is. Now that we have completely filled all our baskets, I can start poking holes for my spinach seeds. I usually use a pen of some sort because I have some pretty large hands, which often make the holes too deep, taking a lot longer for the plant to pop out of the soil. Now we can finally plant the seeds. I love to pour a bunch into my hand so I can sprinkle them into each hole. I'm not as skilled as some gardeners, so I use this method instead of sprinkling directly from the packet. Look at these beauties. Nothing better than some big old spinach seeds. Whenever I plant spinach, I always think of the time when I was talking to my grandma on the phone. She was telling me about how they had so much spinach and that they didn't know what to do with it. So that is my goal every year, but I can tell you, I've never gotten there. Now we just cover up the seeds with a little soil and voila! We have 12 new spinach seeds. I was trying to find something that I could place my new spinach seeds on so that it would be easier to transfer them around the house. So I took a trip to my garage where I have a pile of wood from the failed end tables I tried to make. Let's just say I hope I'm a better gardener than woodworker. But looks like this 2-foot piece will be perfect for the 12 seedlings. I usually like to put a paper towel under my seedlings to help prevent the water from leaking onto the floor. I have a heavy hand when it comes to watering, so overwatering is just a part of doing business. But don't these look amazing? Plus, the DIY starting pots seem to be working. Now, we can finally add the spinach plants to the top bunk of my grow light setup. I don't have enough grow lights, so I ordered some that will arrive in a couple days. But that won't be a problem since you don't actually need light to germinate your seeds. The seeds are like tiny packages with all the food and energy they need to start growing. They use this energy to push out their first little root and shoot. This happens underground where there is no light. Once the shoot reaches the surface and sees the sunlight, it starts to use the light to make its own food through a process called photosynthesis. So seeds are like little superheroes that can just start growing in the dark. If you made it to the end, I appreciate the support. So subscribe if you haven't, and I look forward to seeing you next week as I continue my fall gardening preseason adventures.